So my name is Bautista-Telucci, and these are my slides for the 5 dimension of multicultural pedagogical strategies and the observation video. So the first thing is I wanted to do a brief overview of all of the dimensions of multicultural pedagogy. Of course, content integration, which focus on infusing ethnic and cultural content from multiple cultures into the curriculum. Knowledge construction, where the teachers help the students understand, investigate, and determine cultural biases and assumptions within the discipline. Equity pedagogy, which is using different teaching methods and strategies to enable young adults from diverse groups to be successful in a classroom. Prejudice reduction, which directly helps students form positive attitudes towards other students who may be different from themselves. And of course, powering school culture and organization, which promotes gender, racial, and social class equity throughout the entire school rather than just in one classroom. First of all, from these videos, it's almost impossible to determine whether or not empowering school culture and organization was occurring. All of these videos focused on a single classroom environment and were not representative of a whole school. And all of the videos came from different schools, so you wouldn't even be able to, splice them all together and say, well, from all of these videos, you could say that they have an empowering school culture. So I'm not going to talk about that one pretty much at all in this presentation. So the first of the strategies that I'm going to talk about is content integration. Didn't appear that often, but I think most obviously it appeared in the third video, which was titled "A Day in the Life of a Special Education Teacher." In that video, the teacher helps her special education students with more than just academics. So, for example, they go to a grocery store and they learn how to do some shopping in a controlled environment with the teacher. And these are skills that these special education students will be able to use later in their life, and also directly relates to their situation as special education students and students with disabilities. Knowledge construction also didn't appear that much in these videos, but I think it was most obvious in video 2, which was entitled "Increasing Engagement by Using Culturally Responsive Curriculum." In the video, the teacher makes a specific point of making sure that her students know who the author and of the documents that they are reading, and understanding the biases that may be present in a reading or interview or primary source such as that, because of a person's background, identity, and views on certain subjects. Here's a quote from the first article that I thought was pretty nifty. Equity pedagogy was by far the strategy that I believe was most obvious in all of these videos. And I think that's because these videos tended to focus on the methods that the teachers used rather than the content, while the dimensions of multicultural pedagogy on the whole have a lot to say about the content of lessons. So in video number 1, there were different handouts that people could use. They had flashcards, little drawings. In video 3, there were different tasks so that the students could interact with the lesson in multiple ways to better adjust to what might be their own personal best way of learning. In video 4, the special education teacher had specific tasks and a schedule for her students with disabilities. I think the best example of that was they had PE like in the middle of the day so that they could work out any sort of energy or, any stuff like that that would prevent them from paying attention later in the day. In video 5, which I really liked video 5, there was a co-teaching environment with a special education teacher and a general education teacher, where special education students and general education students were integrated in one classroom. In addition to the two teachers trading off roles in terms of being the main teacher, there was also a group system where students could gauge their own skill level on a topic so that teachers could help the students that felt like they needed it the most. And the confident students who felt like, I got this topic. It was a math class, so I think they were talking about ratios. the confident students could move on to a different topic, after they had shown their ability and understanding of the topic. In video 11, the students were broken up into different stations so that they could engage with different aspects of the text of the Odyssey, and condense quite a large epic poem into a much more manageable unit. In addition, these stations all had different activities that engage different types of students. And so while all students would end up doing all the stations, it would allow them to reach a point that they would feel more comfortable in when they reach the station that was best fitted for them. In terms of prejudice reduction, I think video 1 was probably one of the better examples of that. The students were broken up into very diverse groups. There was no all male or all female groups. They were all very ethnically diverse, and that allowed these groups who were discussing teaching methods, I believe, to receive a diverse group of opinions, so that when those students go on in their future life, they have more of a multicultural background for their own knowledge. And video 11 is also a example of prejudice reduction for many of the similar reasons as video 1. The students were broken up into diverse groups while they were partaking in these stations, so they were able to come at problems in different ways. Now, while I thought there were some of these videos that were quite effective at integrating the dimensions of multicultural pedagogy, I also thought many of these videos were lacking in some respect. Video 6, which was focused on a co-teacher station teaching, it could have just been because of the constraints of the video, but to me, it felt like the classroom was very loud and the stations were competing for each other over what the students should be paying attention to. The co-teachers were forced to talk over each other. And I think this is a nature of having both of the teachers giving some sort of lecture or individual help, along with there being a video that one of the stations was watching and taking notes on in what appeared to be a relatively small classroom. And so I think that the intent was to apply some sort of equity pedagogy. It did not succeed. Similarly, I think video 8 was also very ineffective, although it did also include co-teaching. As far as I was able to tell, it was a general education classroom with general education students on and 2 general education teachers. And while it may be effective for teaching that type of environment, it showed no indication of attempting any sort of content integration or prejudice reduction to engage diverse students. Video 9, I believe, was probably the most egregious failure in terms of trying to integrate one of the dimensions of multicultural pedagogy. There was co-teaching, but from the way the video was presented, it seems like they split off a student who perhaps had a disability. It was hard to tell from the video, but they split off a student to go with one of the other teachers rather than attempting to integrate him with the classroom. And this could have a possible negative effect on that student's peers, who could start to associate negative stereotypes or other things like that with the student because he was split off from the main group and learning with a special education, what I assume to be a special education teacher. And there were no other students with him. In video 10 with high school station teaching, it was an ethnically homogenous classroom, so there was no opportunity for prejudice reduction or equity pedagogy. And because the focus of the video seemed to be on this idea of station teaching, where the students would move around after a certain period of time and do an activity, the content of the lesson was unclear, so there's no way of knowing if they were doing any sort of knowledge construction or content integration in the classroom. Finally, video 8 had no indication of any sort of content integration to engage diverse students. Same thing, general education environment, general education students. Seemed like a very standard lesson, with the only gimmick being there were 2 teachers in the classroom. And to close it out, this was a quote that I found in the Merlin article that I thought was very effective. And I hope that this presentation showed my findings from these videos. Thank you, and have a good day.